Here's our news director, Kevin Haugen.
Well, thank you very much and good afternoon. Welcome into today's Community Comment. Again, I'm your host, Kevin Haugen. It is my pleasure to welcome into the Daily Dodge TV studio this afternoon. Joining us here on our program today, we have with us Watertown Mayor Emily McFarland and Strategic Initiatives and Development Coordinator Mason Becker. Thank you both so much for coming in today.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
And that's quite the mouthful. I'm not done yet with your titles. You have one more. That's Executive Director of the Watertown Redevelopment Authority. So, Mason, you do quite a lot of things over in the Watertown community, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. So I've been with the city of Watertown for almost 2 years now. I was hired in November of 2022. And for about the first 6 months of my job, I was basically focused on one project, and that was finishing the Benson Family Town Square, which was a redevelopment project in downtown Watertown, across from the Watertown Public Library, which had also been renovated and expanded a couple of years ago. So it's been fun since that time, as great a project as that was, and as exciting as the grand opening was in May of 2023, to kind of get to refocus on some other things. My job covers a lot of ground. I help businesses grow and expand. I help developers build housing, which I know we're going to cover today, and then just a lot of other things. We through the Redevelopment Authority, we have various loan and grant programs that we help facilitate as well.
Yeah, so a lot happening in Watertown. Again, we'll highlight a lot of the focus on housing in the Watertown community and the importance of sustaining housing and growing that development there. And Mason, is this something that you had always had an interest in this sort of sphere, working in? You have experience before coming to the city of Watertown, or is this kind of your first time working in this area?
It's my first time directly working in municipal government, but it's not my first time being involved with local government. So just to give you a little bit more of my background, I was basically born and raised in Fort Atkinson, just a little ways down the road on Highway 26. That's where I grew up. My wife and I have 2 kids. We still live in Fort Atkinson. And a few years ago, I decided to run for local office, and I was elected to the Fort Atkinson City Council in 2015. At the time, Fort Atkinson didn't really have a group that was like working on economic development actively. So during my first term there, I helped create an economic development commission, and that body ended up facilitating a revolving loan program, much like we do here in Watertown, and being involved with some other exciting things. And during that time of being involved in local government, it really got me interested in seeing if I could make a career out of it. So a couple of years ago, went back to school. My wife kind of had to nudge me to do that, and I got my Master's of Public Administration through UW-Oshkosh. Actually graduated this past December, and when this job opportunity opened up in Watertown, I had to take a shot at it, and fortunately interviewed with Emily, and I think we hit it off very well, and I'm enjoying my time here.
Fantastic. I swear we'll get to the topic of housing in one moment, but Emily, I just have one additional question for you. Just how important is it to have somebody of Mason's abilities and experience coming into Watertown and helping out with what you guys do in that community?
Vitally important. So particularly for us in Watertown, we have a strong mayor form of government. So I serve as our chief executive and chief elected officer. We don't have a city administrator or a city manager. So when I first started, I tried to do it all. I tried to do Mason's job. I tried to do our communications. I tried to do everything. And what I realized pretty quickly was that if we were going to do development at the level that it needed to be done, the amount of connection to developers that they really require, then we needed someone dedicated to that position. So we knew we needed that for development, but then what I also quickly realized, and why his title is what it is we needed someone that had the intellectual capacity to work on projects across the enterprise, not just in one particular department. And so someone like Mason, with his experience and really just his desire to really push the envelope in development and innovative projects, has really allowed us, I think, to catapult a little bit beyond some of our neighbors. I love our neighboring communities very much. They have tremendous leaders that I in all sincerity, love working with and will miss working with. But I think the ability that our Common Council gave us to hire someone like Mason into this job puts us in a really nice position.
Fantastic. Again, we are joined with on Community Comment today, Watertown Mayor Emily McFarland and Strategic Initiatives and Development Coordinator Mason Becker. But I want to dive into what we're here to talk about today, and that is housing. And I will kick the floor off to, I know, Mason, you're kind of the numbers guy. Emily, you're kind of the relate it to the community person here with us today. But whoever kind of wants to dive in first. But I open the floor and just talk about this substantial need for housing, not just in Watertown, but throughout Dodge County here, Jefferson County, and throughout the state of Wisconsin and across the country.
Yeah, it's a far-reaching problem, for our communities. And like you just referenced, this isn't just a Watertown problem or a Jefferson and Dodge County problem. This is statewide and nationally. Basically, if you look at the data, up until 2008, the United States was building a lot of housing of all different types, single-family condos, apartments, you name it. The Great Recession happened. A lot of developers and contractors either went out of business completely or just had to greatly scale back what they were able to do and put out in the market. And we've never quite rebounded from that in terms of getting shovels back in the ground and getting new construction built. So it's really become pronounced over the last, I'd say, 5 years or so. And now that we're seeing, construction costs have risen over the last 8 years substantially, and interest rates, of course, we're no longer in that 2 to 3% rate environment that we were kind of spoiled with for quite a while. So that made it very tough for developers to necessarily get a project to pencil out in a place like Watertown, where the incomes and rent levels aren't going to be quite the same as they would be in like Dane County to the west or Waukesha County to the east. While our city hasn't paid for a housing study directly, we've worked with a lot of partners in the community that have done their own studies and analyses of our housing shortage. One study that was shared with us showed that today we are short 2,900 housing units in the city of Watertown.
2,900.
Yeah.
That's more than I thought. I would never guess that amount. That's,
I wouldn't have either.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, and that's a mix of both owner-occupied and rental units, so it's pronounced. And we're starting to make progress. I do try to keep track of all of our proposed projects that are kind of in the pipeline. We have roughly 700 housing units in the pipeline today. The fact is that's great. That sounds like a huge, that's making huge progress. But the fact is some of those projects just won't happen for various reasons. Yep. They might not move forward due to financing, or the developer might change plans. We've had that happen before. And so that just shows we have a lot of work to do to really make a dent in this problem.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that we have time to dive into this conversation a little bit later, but something that we chatted a little bit before coming on air today was normalizing the housing process and just how many steps are involved. It's not just reaching out to a developer and say, hey, we have this plot of land, build 20 houses there.
Yeah.
No, there's way more that goes involved in that process.
I always tell people, we bring a development after probably a year and a half of work. So we spend a lot of time just nurturing that relationship with the developer. They have to, put forth a schematic design that has to pencil out. There are copious amounts of ordinances and state laws that dictate and guide all the steps necessary to bring something conceptually, and a lot of money to bring something conceptually too. And so I think what we've been really working hard on in Watertown is explaining all of the steps that it takes. And I use that word normalizing intentionally. We don't talk enough about what it takes to develop.
Yeah.
And so when, public perception and trust in government is probably the lowest it's been in my lifetime, we have an uphill battle, and we've acknowledged that. And so I am not a traditional mayor. I am not a politician. I am a servant to that community for this period of time. And that's allowed me just to speak the truth to people, politely, of course, but to speak truth to people. And so we tried to tell people that they're not going to have every question answered the moment a developer comes forward, because engineering just a stormwater plan is months of work. And that's just stormwater I just picked out of thin air. That's just one component of many, many components required for development.
Yeah, you talk about. I'm sorry, Mason, I didn't mean to cut you off there. If you want to go ahead, by all means.
No, that's great. To go off what Emily was just saying here, there's a lot of steps, and like you kind of alluded to, it seems like somebody should just be able to buy a piece of land and hey, we need housing, so let's throw up that new apartment building or that new single family subdivision. And it's not quite that simple. There's kind of a whole entitlement process that has to play out, and that means making sure the parcel zoning is correct, and do they have to go through a rezoning process? There are statutory public hearings that are involved with that whole process. So we kind of do a back and forth between our plan commission and our common council to make sure we get that aligned. Then we also have something called the comprehensive plan, which that's something that's required by the state of Wisconsin. They came about in the early to mid 2000s, and ours was last updated in 2019. It will be again in 2029. And that calls for something called future land use. So the city kind of picks out areas. Okay, where do we want our future single family housing? Where do we want our future business growth? And if a developer is looking to build something that doesn't fit into the comprehensive plan as it is today, we have to go through a plan amendment process then too. So there's quite a few steps to entitle that property for development. And all for a reason that makes sense, but it can be a process.
And that's, I mean, just the comp plan is a great item to normalize. No one cares about comp plan. I mean, besides people like us, and planners probably, and maybe a small subset of the community. But comp plans are a point in time. I was a part of our 2019 comp plan, and then in 2020 the world changed, right? And so development changed as a result of that. And so I think it's really important for people to realize that yes, a comprehensive plan is a very important guiding document, but it's something that has to be and is legally given a path to change. So whether it's a comp plan, future land use, zoning, people have to parcel off large pieces of land. There's environmental assessments, there's stormwater, structural engineering, architectural design. We could go on and on. The point being, it is a really long process, and the state of Wisconsin does a good job of ensuring that the public's going to be involved in that process. And to come to those meetings just with your, open mind, questions that you'd like answered, and just a positive mindset, I think goes a long way, because Mason touched on it. These developers could be in Dane County or Waukesha County charging rents. They always say it costs the same to build in Watertown as it does in Madison or Waukesha. But what happens is the rents there are higher, so their profit margin is higher. Yeah. And so when they come to our communities, Mason is an excellent liaison for them to ensure that their process with us is smooth. We want to keep them in our community. I wanted to add at the beginning, I ran my second term on housing. Like, housing is the nucleus of development. It is economic growth, it's workforce retention, it's talent attraction. It is increases to your tax base, which allows you the opportunity to potentially lower your tax base. It's more kids in your public schools. I mean, it goes on and on and on about how housing really is the cycle pusher. Like, it's what moves the needle in cities like Watertown.
And that essentially was going to be my next question. We talked a little bit beforehand just about the numbers and behind the housing and the shortfalls that we were seeing in that area. But then why is it important that we close those gaps and address this issue and fix this problem and bring in more housing developments? And Emily, you just hit on a lot of those important pieces. And this is a conversation I hear at the county level. They want to attract the workers. It's a commuter work county. A lot of people say people commute into work. They don't live here. They want those dollars being spent in the community. It's no different than in Watertown.
Same. We know that just about 66% of our employees commute into the city of Watertown, which is not we're grateful to have them coming in and filling our jobs, but we want to be able to have those folks spending their time in Watertown and supporting our little micro economy in Watertown. Did you want to add? Yeah,
no, absolutely, and that it is, not only is it kind of a humanitarian need, we all need housing. It is a economic and workforce need as well. We often hear from employers of various sizes, everybody from small Main Street shops to our bigger major manufacturers to our healthcare providers, that their employees are struggling to find housing, and I'm not talking about people working entry-level jobs. We heard from somebody at one of our local healthcare providers. They had hired a skilled nurse from the Philippines, a highly qualified person. They moved here, and this person's making really good money, not like a starting salary. And they're having to live 20 minutes outside Watertown. I would much rather have that person with their great job and their great income living and spending their money in Watertown versus elsewhere.
If I can just add to that, I think another way to look at it, particularly in a county like Dodge County, where a lot of our county is rural, and some are in towns, some are unincorporated, some are in cities or villages. What I think people kind of struggle with is this concept of, well, I don't want to grow. Right, I want to maintain like the intrinsic and traditional components of our communities, and that growth balance is important. But what that same person may say is, I don't want my taxes to go up. Those two things, unless something drastic changes at the state level with the way cities are funded, those two things are complete opposites of each other. One of the only ways for cities to control the amount of revenue we have, which allows us to reduce the burden on our existing people, is to grow.
Yeah.
And that is dictated by state statute. So until the day comes that changes, we can't be diametrically opposed to those concepts. Like, they have to come together in a balanced and appropriate fashion.
Yeah, it's a difficult tightrope to walk, because you're wanting to keep taxes low and keep things affordable for the people you already have in your community, but keep growing and expanding and have that development grow. And Mason, you talked a little bit about this before as well. Just it's great that you mentioned before that 700 housing development projects, or not all of those will pan out, but there's a lot of projects out there. But it's also finding projects that fit the need for the community that you guys are in, that it's affordable, because that's another big thing that we hear a lot of nowadays. You hit on that just a moment ago too, Mason, that it needs to be at a price point that people can they can afford, that they can day-to-day life, that they can work their jobs, come home and afford the taxes on those houses, and that's always a difficult balance to walk as well.
It's very tough, and one thing I think sometimes people have a misconception of. A city in Wisconsin cannot mandate a developer to build affordable housing units. And, can you expect a developer to build something that they're going to lose money on? No. I really look at it as a supply and demand issue. Our supply of available units has gotten so extremely low that I really do believe, while yes, we need affordable, I believe if we build enough market rate units, that are within industry averages or for the area, I really do believe that long term that helps solve that affordability issue. Yeah. If somebody can move into that new house or that new apartment, that opens up another older unit that's going to be a little bit less expensive.
We talk about it as a cycle all the time. If we approve a project, which we just did, that will build about 80 single-family homes that are, around $400,000. No, that's not going to be affordable for everyone. But what that does, I'll use myself as an example. I'm not moving there, but it allows me, hypothetically, and my family to move out of our home. And now the home that we bought for half that cost is available to the next person. And now that apartment renter moves into it has a cyclical and cycling relationship. That is the approach that we've tried to take in Watertown, is just to bring a diverse amount of housing. So that's like traditional single family. We just approved some small lot single family, acknowledging that not everyone wants a large yard. My husband might, I might, my kids might, but not everybody does. Yeah. We had some new twin homes that are coming, so side-by-side duplexes. We looked at some townhouses in the downtown, which we haven't done. Apartments that have their own entrance, and apartments that are central hallway. So in this 700 that Mason's talking about, we're entertaining gratefully all of those different types of housing.
Yeah, variety is always key when having this conversation. Again, we're chatting with Watertown Mayor Emily McFarland and the Strategic Initiatives and Development Coordinator Mason Becker here on Community Comment. I can't believe it. We're already flying through the show. We just have a few minutes left, and with that time, I just want to give both our guests here today just a few moments to highlight some of the tools that are at the in the tool belt for communities to be able to work and get developments and projects built in their cities.
So the interesting part about developing in Wisconsin is that our state law really restricts the tools that we have available to us. That's different from our counterparts throughout the nation. We really only have one. It's called tax incremental financing. And I just want to encourage people to really be open-minded about the use of TIF in communities, and to also have some trust in your local, governmental employees. I know that's hard to ask these days, but it's the truth. We in Watertown have invested intentionally in people that either consultants that do this every day, all day, or people that have a very solid base of knowledge to be able to know that we're using every resource available to us before we would get to tax incremental financing. That tool, without getting in the weeds, essentially allows, the way we use it in Watertown, for you to pay your taxes as a developer, and for me as a city to give a portion of those back to you to help fill a gap you may have in your development pro forma. Because that's really all state law allows us to use, Watertown has been, in a lot of our counterparts too, have been proactive in creating revolving loan funds, which Mason alluded to, and that's something that the RDA manages.
Yeah, well, the RDA does have a revolving loan fund. It's primarily targeted towards our downtown. It does assist with business development, but it's also been used to activate, for example, upper floor apartment build outs, and that's been very successful. So that has helped some in our downtown area with creating a little bit more housing. We also work with a group called Thrive. That's the economic development body that covers Jefferson County. They have something called the Live Local Development Fund, and now they've been able to accumulate several $1 million in that fund, and that's something that's available if a developer still has a gap, even after TIF, to help fill that need and make their pro formas pencil out for a project.
And that fund is funded by local banks in large part. Some businesses as well that acknowledge the need to have housing be an issue at the forefront.
And I feel a big reason why we're here today too is educating our listeners and viewers about all this that we're talking about today. And I feel like Watertown does a tremendous job with just posting their meetings, having them be able to view online, posting minutes, follow Facebook pages, website. All those updates are posted online there. People are wanting to be interested or follow this process. Mayor, that's a great place for people to go to and get that information.
Yeah, we've been very intentional about ensuring that our community knows what's going on. That was an item from the get-go for me, and our communities really come to expect that from us, and I would encourage others, if they haven't, to really begin to engage your constituency in multiple manners of communication. It's paid off for us tenfold.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we are just about out of time here on Community Comment today. I want to thank our guests one more time with us this afternoon on Community Comment, our Watertown Mayor, Emily McFarland, and Strategic Initiatives and Development Coordinator, Mason Becker. Thank you both so much for coming in today.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Kevin.
And that will do it for today's Community Comment.
Your new